Hello, we're in.
We're in.
We're doing it. All right. Welcome to our Strong Five Responding to a Kid in Crisis Session 2. We are so pumped to be here with you all. I'm Andre Deshotel, Whole Brain Teaching Executive Board member, and I'm also joined by two amazing friends and also dynamic educators. I'm going to throw it off to Weston. Introduce yourself, bud.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Weston Lamb Costantino. I'm a gold certified whole brain teacher here in Wyoming, and I teach elementary music.
All right, Dawn.
Thanks. My name is Dawn McGregor. I'm a first grade teacher from Lamars, Iowa, and I am a platinum certified whole brain instructor.
Yes, thanks again for being here. All right, we're going to throw Weston down there in the chat box, so he'll be supporting you there, and Dawn will be my student. So let's kick things off with this. All right, so we're going to do a quick review on things we covered in session 1. Before we do that, I really want to hold space for this. I think it's important that we acknowledge that responding, Dawn, to a kid in crisis is mind-bendingly difficult, right? It's just really hard work. And so that's why in whole brain teaching, we really lean on this formula, only connect, right? Because we recognize that it's through our relationships and our bonds with others that are the real change agents for especially behavior, right? Like if we think of Wild Jack, he is going to learn so much through the adults in his world. They have the opportunity to develop these circuits in his brain for kindness, for empathy, for regulation. And so we're really going to be intentional today about how we show up for a kid in crisis to really maintain that only connect formula. All right. Quick review. We're going to talk about the upstairs brain and downstairs brain on mirror words.
Mirror words.
Upstairs brain.
Upstairs brain.
The kid has access.
Kid has access
To amazing skills.
to amazing skills.
Things like impulse control,
Things like impulse control,
focus and attention,
focus and attention,
reflection,
reflection,
problem solving.
problem solving.
Mirrors off.
Mirrors off.
Now, those are skills that we need when we are addressing big behaviors, right? And that's where real change and learning can take place when that kid is in their upstairs brain. Now, on contrast, we're going to talk about the downstairs brain. Mirror words.
Mirror words.
Downstairs brain,
Downstairs brain.
different world,
Different world.
different skill set.
Different skill set.
Behaviors are irrational,
Behaviors are irrational,
reflexive,
reflexive,
and
and
very reactive.
very reactive.
Mirrors off.
Mirrors off.
All right, Dawn, I'm going to hand off to you. Would you summarize those upstairs skills and those downstairs skills?
Right.
Hand off.
Thanks, Andre. So those upstairs skills are the ones where our students, they can function, they can problem solve, they can reason. Those downstairs brain skills are when they are dysregulated, it's very reactive, and they are not able to problem solve.
That's it. And, when we're responding to a kid in crisis, our primary goal is going to be to upshift them from their downstairs brain to their upstairs brain. Now, we also recognized last week that sometimes me, the teacher, I don't come with the capacity to support a kid in crisis, right? I'm dealing with my own stress. I'm dealing with my own triggers. And so when we recognize that that is our reality, we talked about a strategy called strategic retreat. Strategic retreat is very simply you going over to the kid who might be triggering you, might be doing some minor behaviors that are not necessarily a safety hazard, but they're still disruptive. You go over, you tell that kid, I feel myself becoming frustrated. You deserve the best from me. We'll talk about this later. And you walk away, right? So Dawn, can you review very quickly what strategic retreat is all about? Hand off.
Thanks, Andre. So with strategic retreat, our student is in crisis, nothing where they are harming themselves, but we're just not quite ready to address it yet. So we go to them and say, I'm not feeling my best right now. You deserve the best from me. We'll talk about this later.
You got it. And so then we identified 3 variables last week that we're going to review. Mirror words.
Mirror words.
During a crisis.
During a crisis.
Maybe it's Wild Jack.
Maybe it's Wild Jack.
Ripping things off the bulletin board.
Ripping things off the bulletin board.
There are 3 variables.
There are three variables.
Two variables.
Two variables.
I,
I,
the teacher,
the teacher,
controls.
controls.
One variable.
One variable.
Oh, I wish I controlled.
Oh, I wish I controlled.
However,
there's
a good chance
that
I can make influence
influence
on that variable. That's outside of my control. Mirrors off. All right, so Dawn, talk about those three variables. We have the teacher, we have the kid in crisis, and we have the rest of our class. Two of those variables we can really manipulate. One of those we can't directly manipulate, but we can influence. Hand off, Dawn.
Thanks, Andre. So we have three variables in our classroom: the teacher, the kid in crisis, and the rest of our class. Two of those, the teacher and the rest of our class, we have a lot of control over. The kid in crisis, a little bit, and we'll get to more of that today.
You got it. All right, Dawn. So last week we basically unpacked phase one of Strong 5, and this is essentially us mobilizing our class, which means that the kid in crisis is going to sort of be wherever that kid is in the classroom, and we're going to move the rest of your class to a safe, predetermined location. Or if on the fly you got to make a change, you can direct them exactly where that safe location is. It could be even in the hallway, right? And so phase one is all about sort of getting your class ready for the teacher to go in and respond to the kid in crisis. So what does that look like? The teacher might call Strong 5. Maybe it's a three-peat, Strong 5, Strong 5, Strong 5. So then the rest of your class moves to a certain area in your classroom. Your Strong 5 leader starts doing a power rehearsal of the rules. And they're going to keep looping through that sequence until the teacher calls them back out of the Strong 5. All right. So that's really what Strong 5 is setting up for us, at least for phase one. Dawn, would you sum up phase one? Handoff.
All right. Thank you. So we're getting the rest of our class where they need to be so we can address the student in crisis. So you're going to call out Strong 5, and you might even three-peat, Strong 5, Strong 5, Strong 5. The students move to a predetermined area. It could be in the hall. It could be sitting at their desk. It depends on where the student is at. Your Strong 5 leader will begin a power rehearsal of the rules, and they will continue through until you call them back.
You got it, Dawn, which brings us very close to phase two and phase three. Now, what have we accomplished? We have our kid in crisis. Obviously, he's there. We have the rest of our class doing a rule rehearsal. Now, Dawn, that means we can go right on in to that kid in crisis and start supporting, right?
Yes.
Absolutely not. Pump the brakes, Dawn.
Whoa.
Right? Because there's something really critical we must do before we show up for that kid in crisis.
Right. What do you got, Andre? What do you got?
We have to pause. What does that pause mean? Well, that takes us into phase two. Because phase two is all about really attuning to our adult nervous system and really being mindful about what do my nonverbals look like? How is my breathing? Where is my heart rate? Is my jaw clenched? Am I squeezing my fist? So really tuning into ourselves, because it could really be the difference, Dawn, of showing up to that kid in crisis and either bringing water or gasoline to the fire.
True.
That's how critical it is for the adult to check in with themselves first. So we're going to talk about how does that happen? What does that look like? So, Dawn, can you emphasize the importance of phase two, checking in with the adult before we really go into that emotional storm?
Thanks, Andre. Yeah, we need to check in with ourselves first. I love that analogy. Are we going to put water on the fire, or are we going to put gasoline? And if we're still kind of amped up and our energy isn't right, we're definitely going to add fuel to the fire instead. And that is not going to be helpful.
You got it. And so essentially what we're saying is we have to manage ourselves before we manage kids. And that's a critical point right there. So let's talk about this whole nonverbal communication thing that I just recently brought up. Communication, Dawn, 55% is our body language. 38% is the tone of voice that I use. Mm-hmm. So what does that tone feel like for that kid's nervous system? And of course, 7% are the actual words that I am saying. So you can see that most of our communication comes from the nonverbal. And that's huge. That's what we're really going to be intentional about when showing up for that kid in crisis. So, Dawn, can you talk about the importance of nonverbals? Hand off, Dawn.
All right. Thanks, Andre. Our nonverbal communication is huge. The majority of what we're expressing is coming through our body language. And then what was the other one?
Yep.
Our tone of voice. Our tone of voice. And the words we say are really minimal. So we really have to check ourselves first.
You got it, Dawn. And while this kid is in crisis, it's important to also recognize that subconsciously they're scanning their environment for cues of safety, cues of threat. This isn't necessarily a cognitive awareness. This is something that is automatically happening. And so it's also important to recognize that that kid in crisis is checking to see if you, the teacher, the adult, are showing signs of being emotionally available for that kid in that moment. And so if I am looking like I am stressed out, my eyebrows are raised, and maybe I'm going over, quickly to the kid in crisis, I could send that kid into more distress, right? And so again, it comes back to really being intentional and having that pause for yourself. So let's take a look at what we mean by nonverbals. So there are three things, Dawn, that we want to focus on when we're approaching a kid in crisis. Now, this is all part of active calming, which is that step one in phase two, right? And so active calming is saying, hey, first thing I'm going to do is pause. I'm going to take a deep breath. Why? Because when we take a deep breath, it's the fastest, most efficient way to tell our nervous system that we're safe. Right? Think about it. You can't be chased by a tiger and still take deep breaths. It doesn't work that way. So convincing your body that you are safe, we can do that with just simply breathing in and breathing out. And when we do that, we decrease our heart rate, our facial features soften, and that is priming ourselves to show up for that kid in crisis. So step one, Dawn, in phase two is active calming by using that deep breath. Review that for us. Hand off.
All right. Thank you. So the first step here is calming ourselves, doing that deep breathing, getting our heart rate down, and getting us ready to work with this child.
You got it. And we know that emotions are contagious. And so another point is we want to make our calm contagious because clearly this kid is in crisis. They are the opposite of calm. And so we really want to bring in this calmness that can essentially download into them. So here are those nonverbal tips. Mirror words.
Mirror words.
3 nonverbal tips.
3 nonverbal tips.
When approaching the kid.
When approaching the kid.
In crisis.
In crisis.
Number 1.
Number 1.
Your position.
Your position.
If the student
is
on the floor,
get
low.
Get low.
Match their position to the best of your ability.
Match their position to the best of your ability.
Number 2.
Number 2.
Where are your eyebrows?
Where are your eyebrows?
If they're up here,
that
could come off
as
a threat. You'll spiral them deeper into their distress. Keep your eyebrows at baseline. Number 3. When you do speak to them, tilt your head slightly. It's softer. It's more connecting. 3 things.
3 things.
Position,
Position,
eyebrows,
eyebrows,
and the tilt.
and the tilt.
Mirrors off.
Mirrors off.
All right, Dawn, can you give us back how we can show up for that kid with these nonverbal tips? And again, our position, those eyebrows, the tilt, all of those are cues that we want to send to the kid in crisis to, again, help them upshift into that thinking brain where they feel safe and connected again. Hand off, Dawn.
All right, thank you. So after we've taken this deep breath and calmed ourselves, we need to be conscious of our position. If the student's down low, we get down low. So to the best of our ability, match their position. Check your eyebrows. If they're up high, that's going to come off as threatening. So make sure they're in their resting place. And then that head tilt is very comforting. And all of these things will hopefully calm the student contagiously.
You got it. And we talk a lot about mirror neurons in our whole brain teaching strategies, and that's exactly what's at play here, right? So even if you're showing up for that kid, maybe he's pounding the floor with his fist and he's grunting, you just going over there and really focusing in on your nonverbal cues, taking those deep breaths, telling your own amygdala, right? Because your amygdala is going to naturally get triggered by this behavior. Because the amygdala takes everything personally, right? Now it's up to you to upshift and convince that amygdala, everything is safe in this moment. Down, girl, stay, right? And so we do that by taking that deep breath. Because those mirror neurons, like I was saying, that student in crisis is going to naturally mimic, maybe not right away, but it will slowly start to diffuse that big emotional storm as he or she is picking up the cues of your safety. So, Dawn, can you emphasize that point about how we're really going to show up and almost, like I said earlier, download that calm into them by using our nonverbals and our deep breathing? Hand off, Dawn.
All right, thank you. So these mirror neurons work all the time, and however we're acting, that kind of just downloads into the student. So if we're taking deep breaths and we're calm, our students will start to mirror that.
You got it. And so point 2 is really just coming down to reducing the cues of threat, and we do that with our own body. And now we're going to talk about part 2 of this phase 2. So we've attuned to ourselves, the adult, and now we're going to actually start using some language here. Now, it is important to also recognize that when a kid is in crisis, they may not be able to process the language you're using. And if you're finding yourself giving some empathy, some validation, and it's not going anywhere, maybe the best thing in that moment is just to sit beside them and really just attune to your own breath and saying something like, I'm breathing in, I'm breathing out, we are safe. I'm breathing in, or maybe there are no words and it's just you taking a deep breath and cueing into those nonverbals. Now, if we're finding that, okay, they have a little more cognitive energy to process language, then I want to first provide empathy, right? So we're going to be really intentional here because we're going to recognize that emotions need empathy and yes, behaviors need boundaries, but it's going to go in that order. First, we're going to tackle those emotions with empathy, and then we're going to hold our boundaries in terms of behavior. So what does that look like? Well, here we go. Mirror words.
Mirror words.
Phase 2.
Phase 2.
Part 2.
Part 2.
First, I'm going to empathize.
First, I'm going to empathize.
Empathy is like a sponge.
Is like a sponge.
It absorbs emotions.
It absorbs emotions.
I might say
to the kid,
I see that you're angry.
I see that you're angry.
I understand that math is hard for you.
I understand that math is hard for you.
I care about how you feel.
I care about how you feel.
We can handle this together.
We can handle this together.
You're right, this is hard.
You're right, this is hard.
Mirrors off.
Mirrors off.
Now, those are very empathetic, validating statements, right? We're really trying to connect with that kid, allow them to feel seen and heard and understood, right? And empathy does not mean that we are allowing the kid to walk over those boundaries. Empathy allows the boundaries to be more accepted by that student because first they're feeling that felt sense of connectedness because you're validating their experience. You don't have to agree with the feeling that they're expressing, but they do want to feel that connection. And so that is part 1, right? Now, sometimes when we're using some validation, and we're saying like, yes, this is so hard for you. I can see that math is making you angry. That can oftentimes flare them up even more. And when we're seeing that our language and sort of naming it to tame it is not working for that kid in that moment, because if you think about it, validation is really like holding up a mirror, Dawn, right in front of you, and you're able to see yourself in that moment. And that can be very vulnerable, and it can sometimes work backwards for us. So with that in mind, if we're recognizing that that is happening, we can go in with something as short as this. I'm here. I got you. I'm breathing for both of us. Notice I did not use emotional vocabulary there. I'm just assuring that student in that moment that they're not alone. That we are connected. I am here. So Dawn, can you explain how validating is not always going to work in trying to de-escalate a student? Sometimes we're going to even use shorter language, something like I'm here and I've got you. Hand off, Dawn.
All right, thanks, Andre. So initially what we might try is using phrases to empathize that express, I see that you're angry, I know that math's hard for you. But at times this can actually trigger them and make the problem worse. So then we need short phrases just to let them know we're here. I'm here for you, you've got that, I've got you, I'm breathing for both of us.
That's it, Dawn. Thank you for that. Now, we also recognize that our capacity for empathy is not always very full, right? And so even if all you can get out vocally is an oof, that alone, Dawn, can help that kid feel understood, right? Because just that sound of oof, that teacher is feeling something heavy, just like that kid is feeling something heavy. So talk about the oof, Dawn, and how we can use that when we don't have a lot of empathy in our tank. Hand off, Dawn.
Yeah, thanks. So sometimes we don't have a lot of empathy either, and it just might be a oof, to let them know, I know this is tough. It's tough for me too, but I'm here. I got you.
You got it, Dawn. And so keeping in mind that when emotions are high, our language and logic are low. And so that's going to be really critical when responding to that kid in crisis. All right, so now we're going to move into phase 3. Okay, so let's just kind of pause for a moment here and think about where we are in this crisis. So while Jack is pulling things off of the bulletin board, things escalated very quickly. You call the strong 5. Your students go and do a rule rehearsal. You check in with yourself. You're taking your deep breaths. You're active calming. Maybe you're even using a mantra, leaning in on your alpha hawk. This is for you, Grandma, my alpha hawk. Or maybe I'm thinking of something that brings me intense joy, chips and queso, wedding cake slices, right? Whatever it is that's going to help you stabilize your energy and again, show for that kid. So that is really what's happening in phase 2 is that active calming, which allows us to access that empathy, right? Now, it's important, Dawn, to recognize that how we convey the empathy is also important, right? If the empathy comes off like this, I get it. Math is hard for you. You know what else is hard? Coming to school every day and dealing with you, right? Like if we're using empathy in that way, that's going to backfire very quickly. So we want to be intentional about how we're conveying that empathy, and using an even, deep tone can really help that kid feel safe and connected when using the empathy. So instead of I get it, math is very hard, it becomes I get it. Math is so very hard. Do you feel the difference, Dawn?
Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. And Dawn, I don't know if you've ever forgotten to put your attendance in on time. Has that ever happened to you?
Every once in a while.
Every once in a while. All right. Well, if you think about it, if your administrator walks over to you and just tackles the behavior without the empathy first, it would feel something like this. Dawn, you're not putting in your attendance on time, and it's district policy that it's in by 8:45. Starting tomorrow, I need that attendance on time. And then the administrator leaves. Whoa, right?
Yeah.
That makes you feel some kind of way, because the administrator did not preface that with any sort of empathy. It went right to the behavior, the attendance, not getting reported on time. But if he did it a little differently, hey, Dawn, I get it. So much is happening in the mornings, and it can be extremely difficult to remember to put in that attendance. That is difficult. Maybe starting tomorrow, you can start by putting a timer on your phone that'll go off as a reminder to put in your attendance. So do you see the difference? Like first I held space for, hey, this is difficult. And now you're more willing to accept that boundary on the behavior to put your attendance in on time. So Dawn, can you unpack what we just did there about how just as adults want empathy before addressing any sort of issue, our students want the same, right? Hand off, Dawn.
Yeah, absolutely. As adults, we would like empathy too when we make mistakes or don't get something quite right. For example, like putting in attendance. If my administrator comes and just addresses that behavior right away, it might set my emotions off a little bit. But if my administrator is empathetic, say, yeah, I know, Ms. McGregor, mornings are tough. There's lots going on. Hey, do you think a timer tomorrow might help you get that attendance in by time? And then I'm more receptive to that. I'm like, yeah, I can do that. And then it doesn't disrupt the whole rest of my day.
That's it. And so now we have our students practicing the power rehearsal. We show up for that kid with some active calming. We give them some empathy. We try to validate their experience. Validation doesn't mean you agree. It just means you're connecting with that kid in his or her current reality. Now, if we are able to connect with that kid with language, we want to present 2 positive choices to that kid. All right. And I emphasize positive choices because our default might sound something like this. Jack, you can get off the floor and start your math now, or you can choose to do it at your recess, right? Yes, we gave him 2 choices. Do the math now or when? At recess. And so in that moment, in Jack's emotional center, that limbic system, he is going to hear that statement as a threat, right? Now he's going to believe that math came into his world to take away his recess, right? Because that's the sort of faulty thinking that is happening in that moment. So 2 positive choices would sound something like this. Jack, do you want to do your math at the back table or do it beside Juan, right? So notice that I'm giving 2 positive choices. We're still holding the boundary. Math is going to happen right now. It's your choice if you're doing it at the back table or beside a friend in class, right? Now, before I give those choices, remember, Dawn, I'm hitting him with what? Some empathy. I get it, Jack. You were not wanting to do math right now. You wanted to stay longer at recess. It's so hard to switch from recess to math. I get it. That's the empathy, right? Now I give him 2 positive choices. Do you want to start your math at the back table or beside Juan? Okay. So, Dawn, explain back to us that sequence of giving the empathy and then following it up with 2 positive choices. Hand off, Dawn.
All right, thank you. So first we give the empathy, and then we give those 2 positive choices. For example, you can do your math at the back table, or you can do it next to Juan.
You got it. And I always love ending those 2 positive choices with this question, because in this moment, essentially this kid feels completely powerless, right, Dawn? There's a schedule, there's a routine, here's the academic work that I'm expected to do. I have to be in this room at this time. There are so many things that that kid doesn't have real power and control over. And so I want to put back as much power and autonomy into that child as possible. And so one way I can do that is just by simply saying, what's better for you? What's better for you? Right. And if you think about the power of that, let's say, Dawn, you go home after a long day at school, you walk into your home and your partner says, Dawn, do you want me to cook that chicken tonight or tomorrow night? What's better for you? What? You will have never felt more seen in that moment, right? You care about my needs. You're meeting my desires right now. That's very powerful. And so we want that same experience for our students. So it would sound something like this. Jack, I get it. You were not ready for math right now. Math can be hard. Do you want to do your math at the back table or beside Juan? What's better for you, Jack? Right? And so when I say what's better for you, it makes Jack feel like he's in the driver's seat and he's calling the shots, but it's within my frame, right? And I'm still holding on to that boundary of it's math time. Okay. So Dawn, can you explain back to us the what's better for you question that we're going to tag those 2 choices with? Hand off, Dawn.
Excellent. Thank you. I love this. So once you've given the 2 choices, you want that student to have some control and some power again. And so you just ask, what's better for you? And then they get to choose, but it's within those parameters of still accomplishing what needs to be done.
You got it. And I do want to also point this out. We talked about how when emotions are high, logic and language are low. So just this past year, I was called to a 1st grade classroom to support a student who would often just go into this withdrawn state, really collapse, dissociated. He was at that moment underneath one of the small group tables.
Mhm.
And of course, it was preventing a small group from going to that area where they needed to be, but the classroom was really adapting to what was happening in that moment. So, of course, I get to the scene and I go under the table to match his position, right? And I am really focused on my nonverbals. Where are my eyebrows? Tilt of the head. And I'm really paying attention to my tone of voice. I'm giving the empathy. I'm giving choices. And this kid isn't even looking at me, Dawn. It's like a blank stare. No one's even next to him under this table. And so, um, of course, I'm there and I pause and then I try again with some more empathy, the same two choices. And I was going through that sequence of putting it out there, being rejected, putting it out there, being rejected. And I remembered this. There is a very, very, maybe even the smallest ear muscle. It's called the stapedis muscle. And what this muscle does is it has the ability to turn sound on and off. It regulates sound. And so for that kid in crisis in that moment to be hiding under that table for a long period of time, um, I felt that maybe this language that I'm using wasn't even getting into his brain because of that stapedis muscle blocking it. So I got a little mini whiteboard and I got a dry erase marker on and I tried to draw what we needed to do in that moment. Now I'm no artist. My first picture was of a stick figure standing up and I put a number one next to it. My second picture, Dawn, was a chair. It was just a very quick chair drawing. Third picture was a book. And so after I sketched this on the whiteboard, I went under the table and I showed the student without words and I just tapped on number one, showing him that the first thing we're going to do is stand up. The second thing we're going to do is we're going to go to a chair, our learning space. The third thing we're going to do is we're going to read a book together. As soon as I showed this kid this visual, no words, no language, the kid got right out from under that table, walked over to his learning space. I quickly grabbed a book, sat beside him, and that's how we got restarted. So explain, Dawn, how when sometimes we're supporting a kid in crisis and we're using and really hoping that our language and our empathy makes a change, sometimes it won't, and we can lean then on some visual supports. Hand off, Dawn.
Awesome. Wow, that was a powerful story. So we're using a lot of language to empathize, validate, and give choices, but sometimes it's like the students really can't even hear us. So then you might choose a visual option. So in Andre's example, just drawing some simple pictures of the 3 steps the child's going to do next. For older students, you could even write out those words and just hold them on a sticky note or a whiteboard for them to read what they need to do. I love it.
Yeah.
Great
Yeah,
job.
thank you. So we're gonna do a couple of role playing experiences right now. Dawn, are you ready for that?
I think so.
You think so? You have no idea what's coming. I love this.
Right.
All right, so Dawn, you're gonna be Maria, and Maria is crying at her desk. Again, she's not doing any unsafe practices. She's just head down. You can hear some crying, and I'm gonna show up, and in this moment, I'm going to apply some empathy and I'm going to try to give her 2 positive choices. All right. So here we go. And action. There it is. You're crying. All right. So I go over and I say, Maria, I'm here. I can see that you're upset.
Mhm.
You're upset. I'm here. Would you like to squeeze our class stuffy, Alfie? Or would you like a hug from me? What's better for you right now? All right. So I gave her 2 positive choices. Maria, I'm giving her the empathy. I'm using her name to try to connect. Now, there is a chance that Maria doesn't lift her head. She does not look at me. She does not even select one of those choices. So what would I do next?
Yeah.
I'm going to tell her, hey, I can see you're not ready to answer, and that's okay. When you are ready, just pick your head up and look at me, and I'll come back over. And then I walk away. Right. So all I'm trying to do in that moment is show Maria that I am a safe person and I am emotionally available for Maria's big feelings in that moment. And so I gave her the empathy, I gave her the two positive choices. That still may not change the behavior in the moment, but just secure with that child that that you're still there, right? And that you're able to support them as soon as they're ready for it. So Dawn, can you kind of unpack what we just did there in that very quick scenario handoff?
All right. So Maria's upset. You go over, you validate her emotions, give her some empathy. I hear you're upset, and then give two choices. She might respond right away. If not, you just, once again, empathize, validate. I see you're not quite ready. Lift your head up when you're ready, and I'll come back.
You got it.
Awesome. Because one time we do wonder, what do we do if what we try doesn't work?
Right.
You've got one
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And that's a key point to make, is that, these strategies don't mean it's going to work, right? Coach uses this really great analogy of, you're suffering from this migraine. And so you finally go to the doctor, and the doctor says, look, I don't have a cure for your migraine, but I do have a pill that's going to make it 20% better. You say, what? Give me the stinking pill. I'll take the 20% better. That's better than nothing. Same thing is happening here. They're not always going to be foolproof, but they can produce some partial change, maybe even some dramatic change, right?
Yeah.
All right, so let's do one more role play, Dawn. Now you're going to be Jack, and he is folding an origami dragon. He's obsessed with origami. It's time to do some math, but he just can't let go of this origami dragon. So you're going to pretend that you're creating it with your hands, and I'm going to come and use some empathy and give you two positive choices. All right, here we go. In action.
Got it.
Hey, Jack. Ooh, I see that you're doing origami right now. Origami is so cool. I bet you would like to keep doing origami. I get it. But it is time for math, and we're going to do math now. You can choose to give me your origami and I'll keep it safe for you on my desk, or you can give it to me and I'll put it in your cubby for later. What's better for you, Jack? So right there, what did I do? I did not go right over and try to stop the behavior, right? The first thing I did was I gave Jack some empathy. I tried to validate that, yes, it's hard to transition from making origami to doing some math problems. And so right there, I'm absorbing some emotion, I'm connecting. And when we connect, we make that student more cooperative, right? And so then I gave Jack two positive choices. I didn't say, give it to me, I'm going to hold this, right? It was, hey, do you feel better putting it in your cubby for later or giving it to me to go on my desk for later? What's better for you, right? So Dawn, go ahead and kind of give that back to us. In that moment, we had a student who wasn't ready to transition to the next task. Instead, they were busy doing something else. Show us and recap what we did with the empathy and the two positive choices.
All right. Thank you. So the student is maybe doing origami, and you go over to them, empathize, let them know, yeah, I know this is fun. Right now, would you like me to take it and put it on my desk or put it in your cubby? So validating, yes, I know you enjoy this activity, but giving him those two choices and putting that ownership back on him by asking what is best for you.
Yeah, that's it. And I love this quote from the book. Don't bite Jack the way everyone has already bitten him. And that is really what we're doing here, right? And really showing up for that kid, feeling composed, feeling like we have some compassion to give to that kid in that moment, which is not easy, right? Remember, I said it's mind-bendingly difficult, especially in the moment when you're trying to run an entire class. But it really is some profound work, and it can absolutely help to create and foster long-term change in those behaviors. All right, so quick recap of those three phases, Dawn. Here we go. Hey, hey, class.
Hey, hey, yes.
Mirror words.
Mirror words.
Strong 5 phases.
Strong 5 phases.
Phase 1.
Phase 1.
Call out strong 5.
Call out strong 5.
Get a power rule rehearsal going.
Get a power rule rehearsal going.
Phase 2.
Phase 2.
Check in with myself.
Check in with myself.
Before I show up for the kid in crisis.
Before I show up for the kid in crisis.
Active calming.
Active calming.
Deep breathing.
Deep breathing.
Inner mantra.
Inner mantra.
This is for you, my alpha hawk.
This is for you, my alpha hawk.
Priming my nervous system.
Priming my nervous system.
To be steady and ready.
To be steady and ready.
For this kid.
for this kid.
Give them some empathy.
Give them some empathy.
Validate their experience.
Validate their experience.
Then move to phase 3.
Then move to phase 3.
Give them 2 positive choices.
Give them 2 positive choices.
End it with, what's better for you?
What's better for you?
Mirrors off.
Mirrors off.
All right, Dawn, in your own way, sum up the 3 phases. Hand off, Dawn.
All right, thank you. So in the first phase, we call Strong 5. We get the class going with that powered up rule review. Phase 2, I'm going to call myself, take those deep breaths, say a mantra like chips and queso, get ready. Then I'll meet with a student, empathize with them, validate. Phase 3, give them 2 positive choices and always end with what is better for you.
That's it right there, Dawn. Thank you so much for that summary. All right, so we do want to also talk about after the crisis is over. Okay, so there are 2 things that we can do. And again, this depends on the student that was in crisis. Do they want to be reconnected with their team? So after everyone is back in their seats and learning is about to take place, you could simply go over to the kid that was in crisis who is now more steady and say, hey, would you like to reconnect with your team, with your class family? And if they nod like this, you can prompt your class to say, you're still cool, or sending you strength, Jack. And if they decide, no, I don't want to reconnect, then that is totally okay. We want to do what feels right for them in that moment. Okay. And then the second thing we want to do, when we know that teacher and kid in crisis are definitely back in their upstairs brain where they have access to reflection, rational thinking, that's when and where we're going to talk about the experience that led up to that crisis. And here is where we're going to possibly teach a replacement behavior. We might show them an emotional regulation strategy, and we might also use a natural or logical consequence. And we're going to talk about that very briefly. But right now, Dawn, tell us what's happening after the crisis, reconnection, and then we're going to actually address what happened before the crisis and maybe even during the crisis. We're going to talk about all of that. Hand off, Dawn.
All right, thanks, Andre. So after the crisis, we're going to see if the child wants to reconnect with the class. And it could be doing you're still cool. What did you say for the other options?
Sending you strength.
Sending you strength. And if the child says no, that's okay. Then you just move on. And then you're going to talk more about the behavior. And this is when everybody is in their upstairs brain and we can process. So it could be teaching replacement behavior, doing an emotional regulation strategy, or there could be some kind of consequence for the behavior.
Right. So let's talk about the replacement behavior. So now I had the kid, he's pretty steady, in a harmonious state. So am I. I go over and I say something like, that was really tough this morning during math. It was tough for you. It was tough for me. It was tough for the whole class. Let's think about this together. You started taking your markers and drawing on your desk. Next time you feel angry, I want you to take this notebook and I want you to draw what it feels like inside your body on this notebook. So that would be an example of a replacement behavior, right? So instead of drawing on the desk, it becomes, ooh, I'm drawing in a productive way on my notebook to express how I'm feeling inside. So Dawn, explain to us what we mean by a replacement behavior. Handoff.
All right, thanks, Andre.
You're welcome.
All right, so replacement behavior. For example, if a student is scribbling all over their desk or over their work that they need to do, say, I know that was really tough this morning. Next time you feel that way, here's a notebook. Use that instead. So finding a replacement behavior instead.
That's it. Now, when we want to teach our students an emotional regulation strategy, it is so important to make sure that we're teaching them this when they're in their upstairs brain, when they have access to learning, right? And when they're practicing this emotional regulation skill while they are regulated, it becomes more accessible to them when they are dysregulated, perhaps later on. And so emotional regulation strategy could be a breathing board where you're simply tracing a shape and it's guiding your inhales and exhales. It could be the breathing hand where you're kind of tracing your fingers and breathing in and breathing out very slowly. It could be using maybe a classroom trampoline whenever you need to get that extra energy and use those big muscles in your body. If you're feeling angry, you go jump on a trampoline for 30 seconds. It could be a strategy called the push, pull, and dangle. What that means is the kid is pushing down on their chair, pushing up on their chair and then dangling their arms beside them, just to kind of get out some of that that big energy that could turn into big anger, right? So those would be examples of emotional regulation strategies. And then finally, we have a natural consequence. If a student ripped things off of a bulletin board, a natural consequence would be to have that student do his very best to repair that bulletin board. And so that's what we mean by matching the consequence to what the behavior was. So, Dawn, very briefly, if you can, sum up the emotional regulation and the natural consequence. Hand off, Dawn.
All right, thank you. So for the emotional regulation strategies, these are things we want to practice with the whole class before anybody even needs it. So when they're feeling that way, they already know what to do. Things like breathing boards that help you inhale and exhale. You can breathe going up and down with your fingers, and then the push, pull, dangle. Push down on your chair, pull up, dangle your arms. And then for consequences, do you want it to be logical? Is there a consequence that matches that behavior? For example, if they're pulling things off a bulletin board, have them help you or try to put it back up.
That's it. Thank you, Dawn. What a remarkable student you were throughout this session. Thank you for that. We're going to bring Weston back in, and he's going to give us an update on what's happening in the chat. So, Weston, how are you? You're muted.
I'm still cool. Sorry about that.
Yeah, what's happening?
Presentation this morning. A lot of people were connecting with what you had to say. And I think the biggest thing is not, you're emphasizing it's not what we're saying, but how we're saying it.
Yep, so true. So no questions right now?
I didn't see any questions, but if anybody has any questions, they can put them in the chat right now.
Absolutely. And if you're watching the replay and you have a question, please put that in the chat and we'll absolutely get notifications where we can come in and address those questions. So, well, I would like to thank, if that's all, Weston, is that all?
I think that's it.
All right, excellent. I would love to thank Weston and Dawn for joining me for the last 2 weeks for this very important session, Strong 5, Responding to a Kid in Crisis. Dawn, I will let you sign off.
Bye. Thank you, everybody.
And Weston, go ahead.
Thank you so much for having me. This was awesome.
Yes, and if you have not gotten it already, everyone, please go out and get the second edition of the Whole Brain Teaching book. It's on Amazon. And if you do have it, please leave us a review. Stay kind to yourself, and we'll see you down the road. Bye, everybody.